Hello and welcome to Emily Lunar Astrology. Today I am talking about expressions of health and natural medicine. I have a special guest who I will introduce shortly. So hi and welcome if you're here. And if you catch me on the replay, thank you very much. So I am Emily Kalcher. I am an astrologer and intuitive tarot card reader. And I struggled with inflammatory bowel disease growing up, and I found that the lunar cycle and yoga and all of that actually really helped my well-being. And from there, that's when I found astrology. So I really love helping people to more compassion for themselves and others and personal growth and things. And I'm really happy to help you, whatever you're going through. If you would love to book a reading with me and what I talk about with Kira today, I will tell you in a minute about her. But if you love what we do, then feel free to book a reading with us if it resonates. My website is emilylunarastrology.com. So let me introduce my guest, who is Kira Sutherland, if you haven't seen from the thumbnail. Let me find whatever to. So Kira is based in Australia. She is a naturopath, nutritionist, herbalist, and medical astrologer. Known for her vibrant, straightforward teaching style, Kira has lectured in medical astrology within Australia, North America, and Europe. In private practice for over 25 years, Kira combines her knowledge of natural medicine with her passion for medical astrology into a wonderful mix of mind and body medicine. Let me bring Kira on screen. Welcome, Kira.
Hey,
Nice.
I made it.
Yay!
Yeah.
Yes.
With a few false starts.
Oh, yeah. That's life, though, isn't it, I guess? And also, we're other sides of the world. So for anybody out there, it was the summer solstice yesterday here, but the winter solstice for Kira, where she is.
Yeah, nice and cold well, Australia doesn't get that cold, but it's cold. It's cold. It's probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 degrees today.
Yeah, it's definitely in the 20s over here.
Nice.
It's hot. So would you start us off with your big three and a little bit about how that kind of plays off in your life?
Oh, sure. So my big three, I am an Aries sun. So I'm an Aries sun, a Sag moon, and a Pisces rising. So I'm a really late Pisces rising, and I use Placidus as a house system, although I can transfer to equal house quite easily. But so yeah, late Pisces rising, which is probably my savings grace. It makes me a lot softer, and that's probably my more healing, intuitive, although I think Aries is intuitive, but yeah, that softer side, that empathetic side. So I Aries sun. I'm a bit of a stellium in Aries, not a bit. I have a massive stellium in Aries. But it all sits in the first house, no matter which house system. Not if you're using whole sign, it would be second, but I'm a very much first house sun girl. And how does Aries play out in my life? It's my whole life. I think having a stellium with your sun and my north node, luckily, I just getting to be Aries is, that's kind of the whole life path in some ways. Or experiencing things, everything is through that personal experience, I really think. But yeah, excitable, loud, a little bit, I don't want to call myself pioneering, but I just get excited and I do new things. I'm not considering if it's pioneering or not. I'm more like, this interests me, let's go do it. And then I end up doing something unusual or new. So yeah, I have that adventurous kind of side to me. And then I am Sag moon in the 9th. So philosophy, spirituality, that's probably where my search in astrology, that with the Pisces, into astrology my whole life. One of my mom's best friends was an astrologer growing up, even though my parents are scientists. So I was given both worlds. I grew up in San Francisco, but my adult life was in Australia. So yeah, I grew up with a lot of sacred and a lot of science growing up in San Francisco in the 70s. But my Sag moon, oh my God, so much fun. If you were to say one thing that I wouldn't want taken away from my chart, it would be my Sag moon. I love my travel. I love my philosophy, adventure, and sport. I'm huge on sport. So yeah, very ninth house moon. Actually, I'm moon Mars ninth.
I'm moon Mars in the 8th in Capricorn.
Oh, quite a different flavor, but I love it. Moon Mars is interesting. There's a lot of moon Mars people, I think, in the astrology world.
Yeah, I recognize some of this sort of Saggy energy, but also my husband, he's a Sagittarius, but he's Leo rising. So whatever way, you can always hear him before he enters the room.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
he's also one of these people that if he goes somewhere, he can know his way around there once. He doesn't have to ask for directions or anything like that. Whereas me, with all my Gemini stuff, although Frank newly rectified my chart for me recently, and I'm now a 27-degree Taurus rising.
Oh.
But all the Gemini stuff is still in my first house because it's not much Taurus there, if that makes sense. But it's kind of it's interesting, the mix.
Yeah. I can't, I was talking about sense of direction the other day with somebody, because I have incredible sense of direction in the northern hemisphere, but then where I'm born, my natal chart is, San Francisco, but I live in Australia. I have a terrible sense of direction in the southern hemisphere. And it's like I'm just turned around. I mean, I know where I am, but I'm not great. I think my Pisces rising takes over. If I'm in charge, I know exactly where I'm going. But the minute somebody else is in charge, so they're taking me where they go, I completely surrender and don't pay any attention to where I'm going. Like if I come to London and I'm lecturing for Frank, if I'm staying with him or if I meet up with him, he's leading the whole, I mean, he's another Aries, but I have no idea where we are. It's taken me years to figure out, I know how to read a tube map. It's not hard, but it's so funny that I just completely surrender to somebody else being in charge.
Beautiful word for Pisces as well, surrender.
Yeah.
Surrendering and the retreats and internet. Yeah, that's really cool. So what about, we kind of touched upon that already. So, okay. What came first for you? Was it the astrology side or the natural medicine and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So look, I knew about astrology a lot longer than I knew about natural medicine. Growing up, as I said, in the 70s in San Francisco, I guess I was around natural medicine as well, but I didn't really know what it was. I was very nutrition focused as a teenager. I read a lot on nutrition. I originally went to university to do nutrition. But I also got very involved in spirituality. And then, I was always doing the astrology. I don't actually know what came first, but what happened is I moved to Australia and I signed up to finish university doing I found naturopathy while I was living in Europe. I lived in Europe for about 5 years, moved to Australia, finally time to go back to uni, signed up. And luckily, my university at the time let you take a bunch of electives, and there were some wacky electives in naturopathy back then. And you actually could take astrology as one of your 3 electives. And I was like, finally, I can study. I had always read on astrology and I knew about my whole chart, but I had never formally studied it. So I actually studied them both simultaneously. Yeah. And then I was frustrated that naturopathy kind of didn't have an energetic system to it. Like people were finishing this 4-year degree and then they were off doing traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda. And I was like, well, where's our system? And then my astrology teacher did one class on like body astrology, and I found out medical astrology existed. And there's all, like Culpeper and herbal books that have, plants ruled by certain planets. So I guess I knew it was there, but I didn't, until it was presented as a system, I didn't know about it. And then that was it. That was like my huge, I always thought this medical astrology was going to be my hobby. Naturopathy is my main gig, and my hobby has turned into half my career. Absolutely. It's like, and more over the years. Yeah.
So if there was like one book that you'd recommend for people to look at herbs and planets, what would you say?
Oh, look, I do love Culpeper, Nicholas Culpeper, the English physician, longest book in print in English, supposedly, besides the Bible. That's what everybody says, at least.
Wow.
Because it's been in print since the late 1600s. It's never been out of print, as far as I know. I'm sure you can also find it online. But that's really just herbs and planet rulership. It doesn't heavily go into the energetic. If we needed to do herbs and planets, anything by Cunningham is actually really good. I can't think of his first name. I want to say Stephen Cunningham. He's not here, he's passed away, but he writes more on magic and herbs, but it's still the same astrological rulerships. So that would be more herbal than medical astrology. What is my favorite? My favorite starting book is probably Jane Ritter Patrick's Handbook of Medical Astrology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely need to look that up.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. I might have it here. If you keep asking me questions, I might be able to grab it.
Okay.
I'll grab it. Hold on. I know you're not going to see me for a sec, but hold on.
No worries.
That's the new cover version. Came reprinted about 8 or 9 years ago. She wrote it years ago, but she's Scottish. She's amazing. So it's a lot of good history and kind of the traditions of it. And then it explains, it's good with, it's simple and concise. Probably my favorite. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. As you can see, not many books have little tabs in them, but this one has tabs.
True. So, okay, if there was like a definition of medical astrology, what would you define it as?
Well, it has different, just like regular astrology, which is everything except medical, it has different avenues to it. But in general, medical astrology is the idea that we have ascribed the planets, the signs, the houses to different body parts, different systems, different organs, illnesses. So looking at your natal chart is like looking at a blueprint of your health's strengths and weaknesses, and you can assess your constitution. And it's just like a great roadmap or treasure map, really, but it's a roadmap into how to support yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, not just physical. You can really, astrology has such a beautiful psychological side to it, but it's also how to support your nervous system and your mind and your spirit. So it's this great, how it works so well for naturopathy with me is it's looking at the whole person on all those different levels, not just the physical. So yeah, it's like a blueprint of your physical body and potential issues. Yeah.
So I say then astrology gives you the blueprint of what your capabilities and strengths, weaknesses, etc. could be within life, like topics to discuss and lots of different things. And then if you layer medical astrology on top of it, it's like, well, how can we then relate that back to health and well-being and all of that juiciness?
Yeah. Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun when because you've been in a class with me before. How many years?
Yeah.
So did you get like, what was your big takeaway when you first looked at your chart medically?
Well, it was kind of cool to look at Pluto in my chart and realize that maybe some of that does explain maybe the Crohn's and that sort of thing. And then relating things back to my Yod, to my sun in Gemini, and well, I've got Gemini stellium in my first house. Like, well, okay, I can see that different times when there's some anxiety or whatever, that's when the Crohn's will flare. And it's kind of, it's putting things that you intuitively know back into chart way of seeing it, I guess.
Yeah, well, it just gives you that, it gives you symbols and signals into how to support yourself, doesn't it? Or understanding why you have those issues, or like stellium and Gemini. Gemini, for those that don't know, rules the nervous system, like the brain, the spinal cord, but the nervous system. And so stress, anxiety, common, busy mind, common. And then there's a link with Mercury between Gemini and Virgo's small intestines, although Crohn's can be the large intestines or the small intestines.
Yeah, large.
But large intestine. Yeah, it can. It's more likely to be large, but it can be the small. But that whole bowel, the whole digestive system is basically, the whole digestive system is ruled by the nervous system in some ways, right? There's the stress, you know, fight, flight, run away, there's danger, or there's digest, relax. There's two parts to our nervous system. There's actually more than that. But so, and it's the nervous system being too hypervigilant, and then digestion goes down for a lot of people. Or when we're relaxed, when we always say, you know, don't eat, don't swim after eating, or, you know, be aware when you're eating. That's because we're wanting the nervous system to be relaxed. So it actually tells the digestive system to do a good job.
Yeah.
Very Virgo, Gemini.
Yeah.
Sixth house.
Yeah, I loved, actually, that's a good segue. So there are those health and wellness houses within our chart, aren't there? I mean, I typically think of the 6, which a lot of people would focus on, but I know there must be more that you would look at, and I'm sure that when you talk to us both in London and also things you've done online, you've specified a lot more, but I can't condense that.
So in traditional medical astrology, the big health houses to focus on are the 6 that will never go away. The 6th house is considered the house of illness, or the house of kind of acute, you have to deal with it on a daily life illness. I really see more as a modern description, though, is it's also kind of a preventative health house. The 6th house rules daily life, service to others, hard work. And as we all know, health is daily hard work, right? Health is not an easy thing. And so the more effort you put in within that 6th house, the better your health actually is. So it is the house of disease or illness, but I also think it's the house of kind of where you need to ritualize your health habits, right? We need to create them to be more sacred rather than mundane. So the 6th house is a big one, and you always look at the sign on the cusp, and you look at the ruler of the 6 is very important, where it's sitting in the chart, the state that it's in. But the other big health houses in traditional medical astrology, the 1st house and the ascendant is in charge of the physical body. So whatever the ascendant sign is, what that ruling planet is your chart ruler anyway. So that's a trigger for that 1st house. But the 1st house, any planets in the 1st, you often experience physically. You need to kind of juggle that support. I love the 1st house, though. It's so obvious, right? So 1st, 6th, and then the next big health house is the 8th, which is, so again, always the cusp of the house, what sign is ruling it, what planet then rules it. And we do tend to use traditional rulers in medical astrology. We will jump to the modern rulers kind of as backup, but always looking at the traditional planets first. But the 8th house, it's a big one. The 8th house is the house of surgery, genetics, so inherited ailments. It's, the deep psychological stuff that you would know about from regular astrology. The 8th rules, in general, the 8th rules the bowels, the large intestines, whereas the 6th house rules the small intestines. The bowels, the reproductive system, so regenerative organs, as they would say, your reproductive organs, and all your detoxification channels. So it's a lot of big processes in the 8th. We would also say traditionally it's the house of death, not to jump to conclusions, but, medical astrology has been around a lot longer than life-saving surgeries and antibiotics, and life was a lot more precarious. So we would look at it, we used to kind of joking, I don't know if it was a joke, I joke about it now, and you would say, planets in the 8th kind of describe your death in some way, but anyway, I don't actually go there very often. I joke because I have Neptune there. So that would be death by drugs or drowning, right? So maybe no drugs while I'm in the water, or I don't know. It would be more something I would look at after the fact, when somebody has passed. What were the triggers to the 8th and things like that? That's more what they're really pertaining to. And the 6th and the 8th are considered weaker houses health-wise because they are quincunx, or in conjunct, to the 1st house. Your astrology people are pretty technical astrology people, yes?
I have a mixture of some that are and some that not so much.
Okay. So houses directly opposite each other, we call it to be in full sight. Like I can see directly opposite me, yeah?
Yep.
Whereas the house either side of the opposition is the quincunx, which is like that. You can't see my hands, right? It's just to either side. And so there's some miscommunication that goes on between the 1st to the 6th or the 1st to the 8th. They're awkward to each other. And then the final big house of illness is the 12th, because it's behind you. Like if you're at the ascendant looking through the 1st house, the 12th is behind you. It's hard to kind of intuit. We often don't see our 12th house very well, or it's like a mystery to us. It's things that are hidden. It's hospitals, institutions. It actually, to take to bed when you're sick, like to be bedridden or to be ill is a 12th house experience, taking to bed or hospital. And it's also the house of chronic illness. So the 6th is acute, 12th is chronic. Yeah, and mental health often got given there, although mental health has such a bigger scope these days. And when you have surgery or you have to go to hospital, it's actually meant to be really nice if Jupiter or Venus is transiting your 12th. That's meant to be like a little bit of a guardian angel while you have to be in hospital.
Yeah,
those are the main health houses. Although, in my opinion, you can have illness from any house and any planet. Yeah.
Yeah. What you're saying about looking at having Venus or Jupiter near your 12th, did you say?
Well, transiting. If it's transiting your 12th, I think they would probably say Venus in the 12th is considered good luck if you have to go to hospital, but while transiting, it's more specific.
Yeah, so if people had the choice to elect when they have surgery, that'd be kind of cool to look at a chart, just say, okay, let's do that then.
And that's a huge part. There's whole ways to assess when to have surgery, mainly based on the moon. But there's about 20 other things to look at. And if you followed every rule, you would never elect to have surgery. It's like near impossible to find good surgery dates. So you're finding the best of, depending on how many rules you want to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever done a surgery lecture at London School of Astrology. I'll have to check that out. I can't remember.
Oh, well, if you haven't, then I've sparked an idea for you.
I know. There you go. I mean, I do those as a lecture, but I have the catalog of what I've done for Frank. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that when I saw you live in London to have that talk, you'd actually brought us a lot of handouts that were laminated as well, so you could look.
Oh, yes.
At okay, here's my sign. Here's some ideas of some herbs, some food. Yes, like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That handout, this one, although it might not be the colored one, is the free download. It's the free download on my website if you're listeners or watchers, which goes through sign, ruling planet, element, body part ruled, and then it goes through a lot of natural medicine. You're not meant to do it all, but it's a really good, this chart is actually what I created to teach myself medical astrology originally, because I'm a really visual person. So when I studied astrology, my teacher introduced medical astrology, but she didn't teach it. And there was no one around in Sydney at the time teaching it. And I'm going to show you my age. This is pre-internet, only just. And so I taught myself medical astrology and made a lot of tables and charts originally. It's a little bit easier these days with ChatGPT to make charts. Yeah. Yeah. So that's on my website. But yes, I brought lots of tables this time, didn't I? Everyone got to grab a few different tables.
Yeah.
And again, it's how I remember things. I have ones on nutrition. I have ones on herbs, ones on planetary actions. Yeah. There's a book of tables to be had.
Cute. So what was what's it called? You had lunar essences or something, was that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about
did I?
those?
I didn't bring those though, did I? No, I didn't bring them.
No, you didn't know, but
you know about them.
I know.
So again, what do I do for craft? I don't sew, I don't knit. I make things really randomly, and I use a lot of flower essences. So I love the Bach flowers or Bach flowers, depending on how you want to say it. So flower essences are kind of an energetic way to take herbs to help with emotional states of being. Actually, they're all, this is backwards. All my essences are sitting right here, but they're a bit hard to see. But obsession with little bottles is happening back there. So you can take multiple flower essences and put them together. You put a few drops of different essences into a little jar, shake it up, and then you take it. And there's ways to do that with your natal chart, which I would have taught you over the years. But during COVID is actually when I started this. There's a way, this is more Wicca kind of things brought into astrology. There's a way to make lunar and solar essences. So like you can take a crystal ball or copper, because copper kind of reflects negativity, and you put spring water in it and you put it out in the sunshine, although you're in the UK, but you still put it out outside where the sun hits you. It's sunny now, I know. Like if you put it out on your birthday, you're actually making like a solar return water. So the idea is the sun potentizes into the water, and then you take that water and you would put it with something to stabilize it so it doesn't go moldy. Like some people will use a vinegar. Traditionally, we would use brandy or another hard alcohol. So I would go like a 50-50 water and brandy. And then you have, this isn't it, but you would like take some of the water, 50% water, 50% brandy. And then that's like your solar return water. So it's like a potentizer of that day. And you can take it for energy, or if your vitality is feeling low, that's a solar water. You can make it, you can really make it kind of the day before, the day of, the day after. Like if you forget to make it on your birthday, I then actually make it into sprays. I add aromatherapy and other things. So I have like these body mist solar waters that I make for myself. And sometimes I make them for friends. If I remember to make a solar water on somebody's birthday, it's really fun to give them a set of like drops to take and a body spray. It's like the most personalized gift you could ever give, right? So then you can make lunar waters under any moon sign or moon shape. Again, you're not going to do these during eclipse season, kind of stay away from the eclipse by a week or two. But you put a bowl of water out under a different moon shape or a moon sign. And I, over a couple years, made lunar waters under each of the 8 lunar phases. But I did it with every single sign. So I have a lunar water, like Aries new moon, Aries crescent, Aries first quarter. It took a long time because I had to avoid certain things and then I was traveling. So I have all these hundreds of bottles sitting. They're actually all sitting in here somewhere. And so then I took like all the new moons, like the 12 zodiac new moons, and I put them all together. So you have a lunar essence with all 12 moons. And then I added in 3 flower essences that fit the energetics of what the new moon is about. You know, that new beginning, that just intuiting a new plan. It's that start. Like a lot of people do lunar work at the new moon versus full moon. But so I made an essence for all 8 phases of the moon. And then, yeah, flower essences that add to the processing of those 8 phases. You know, the Dane Rutger kind of work, Demetra George, a lot of people have written on lunar phases. Yeah, so they're a set that you start at the new moon, and I made a little workbook to go with it.
Oh, brilliant.
And yeah, it's really, actually, I gifted it to somebody, gifted a set last night to a friend of mine. I was trying to explain lunar phases. That was a big conversation, but they're really fun. They're not, I kind of made them just to see what it would be like. I've had people have really great months when they're using them, much more productive. I've had other people, I've had female friends that I gave it to kind of test. I had them often, without saying anything of what it could maybe do, a lot of them found their menstrual cycle got healthier or stronger or more in rhythm. And that was a really nice side effect that I didn't expect. It doesn't happen for everybody, but it's just a nice ritual to get you into the pattern of where the moon is, but also just to get you thinking about what's going on every day.
So, for instance, this upcoming Cancer new moon, someone could take the lunar essence for Cancer's new moon and set their intentions, and then really feel into the energy, maybe light a candle or be beside some water, and really cool.
And what they're wanting to create, and you focus on, you know, whatever the new moon is. So with this set, it doesn't matter what moon phase you're in, because each of the essences has all of the moons, although I do still own, I could sell whole sets of just like, people could be like, oh, I'm a Cancer moon, I want to count, you know, like I could make sets of people's big 3s as well, but I haven't got around to that. That's an idea, isn't it?
Yeah, I like that.
You could even be interesting when the sun is in Leo, just so it's stable. It'd be really interesting to make a bunch of, I could make a bunch of sun ones, but that'll take a year, but doing all the ascendants. It would almost be fun to do the ascendant. I was thinking just leave the sun in Leo, because that's its natural home, stable, and then you could do in a 24-hour period over a couple days or something, do all the rising signs. Or you do the rising, I could make a rising each month Like I could do Leo rising when the sun is in Leo as well for that energy. Anyway, my brain is going 80 different directions. Welcome to Kira's brain.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. But everybody can make those for themselves, right? It's very inexpensive to put a bowl of water out. I sometimes make, if I'm making a solar water for my birthday, or it was my daughter's birthday recently, she's a Gemini, I put out the bowl of water and then I kind of build a little altar around it with things I find, or crystals or feathers or ribbons, and I kind of potentize and make it more of a sacred altar. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
That's my craft.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it. Okay, where to go?
We've been through so many topics already.
I know. Oh, so are you happy to talk about some sort of challenges and successes that either regular astrology or medical astrology or your work in general have kind of helped with?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Challenges and successes. I'll go for challenges first, and then we can do successes. Medical astrology is amazing, but you have to be very careful, because medical astrology can also feel very negative for people. Like when we study medical astrology, you're basically studying illnesses. I'm not always like, oh, you're going to be so healthy. And like we're troubleshooting, right? And I mean, I do go through constitutionally like the positives with different signs and things like that. But typically when someone comes to see a medical astrologer, we have to be really careful. Most of the time, we're also a health practitioner, but not always. There's real ethics and boundaries you have to have around what you tell people, how you tell it to them. It's not a diagnosis. I leave that for the doctors. Although the word diagnosis slips in sometimes with people, but if I have somebody that helps me with socials, and I noticed the other day she used the word diagnosis, and I quickly went in and assessed it into, I changed it into assessing, or, investigating, because you're not going to name a disease. You don't ever want to name a disease. You can name problems, or you can suggest like, hey, your liver might be struggling here, but I'm not going to be like, you have cirrhosis. Like, it's not my place. I'm not a doctor. I'm a naturopath. It's different. But it's also going to scare people, right? And medical astrology can be very negative, because you're going to learn about all these planets and the health ailments and problems you can have with systems. And people don't generally come to a medical astrologer. I mean, people do sometimes come and just say, tell me about me and my health. But where its forte is when somebody comes with a health issue or multiple issues, and we go and we find where those issues are in the chart. And when we find where it is in the chart, it's easier to know how to support it through mind, thinking, diet, lifestyle, herbs. Like I do give treatment, but it's also sometimes I set assignments for them to go read books, or I get them to go work on their nodes, or, we talk about different styles of exercise via their Mars, or, so you can see where the stress points are coming from. And then you can also look as an astrologer, you don't even have to be medical, to know, like, if the problem is Mars in Virgo in the 5th, you can also go to all the other definitions of what that means in regular astrology and get them to work on, expressing their Mars creatively in that 5th house, or dancing, or whatever it is, sex. People Yeah, sometimes I worry people expect too much. Yeah, there's no diagnosis. It's more assessment, find where stuff is coming from, or we look at why things have happened, why something has happened, because health is such a big why. But you can look at injuries and illnesses as like a transit chart. What was getting triggered, and what you can often see what's the bigger thing I need to learn from this. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Or areas to work on. The other downfall, and look, Jyotish astrology, or Vedic, does a lot more timing techniques, and some traditional Western medical astrologers do timing techniques. I'm not a fan of it. I will often get people coming in and they're like, here's my illness. When am I going to get better? What's the timing of when this is going to go away? And I know there are techniques to predict, but I don't typically do that, because how am I to know what effort they're going to put into getting better? And if I'm like, oh, you have this problem, but it'll be gone in a month, or is that person actually going to do anything to try to make that problem go away? And then they might not. And then they're like, but you said it would go away. So that's, health doesn't work that way. Yes, you can see some timing, or this transit's coming up that might help release something, but I don't predict. And that's a big thing. And that's me ethically. There's other medical astrologers, I'm sure, that do more predictive, but I can look at transits and progressions coming up and discuss what needs to be worked on, but I would never predict an illness. And I do spend 2 or 3 consults a year convincing people that a certain transit is not going to be cancer. And they're like, but an astrologer told me that could be cancer. And I'm like, where's the ethics in telling somebody that? Like, just because you have a Pluto transit doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have cancer cell changes. You could have a huge transformative other Pluto type experience. You could have something really cathartic. You might just need to do a detox. You might get constipated. Like there's so many different things you can't name. It's just like regular astrology. Whatever transit's coming, it never is what you think it's going to be, is it? You know how, like, when you look at transits, you're like, I can see the energy, but you don't know what's going to happen. Turns out your mother-in-law stubbed her toe and fell down the stairs. It had nothing to do with you physically, right? Like, so I think that's the hard part of medical astrology, is it can really scare people if it's not taught properly or not delivered in an ethical, careful way. And if I were to say to somebody, you're going to have liver disease or you're going to have cirrhosis, the mind is so powerful. What if they create that, right? I don't want to give them the seeds of creating something really negative. That's terrible. So I'm super cautious with that. I think those are the biggest downfalls of it. Is it can sound very fatalistic if read incorrectly and can be taken the wrong way. And it's also not a fix-all, right? I'm going to point out stuff, but then I'm going to make you go do work. I mean, you've heard me lecture. It's not about the learning. It's about the doing. Like, if you want your health to be better, health is exhausting and takes a lot of effort. But gosh, when you have good health, it's so amazing. And then when you have bad health or poor situations, gosh, is it exhausting?
Yeah.
Actually, they're both exhausting. Yeah. I mean, you've had a chronic health ailment, right? Like, you've had a lifelong inflammatory issue. And that's you got to juggle that every day, right?
Yes. But it's also, there's the time factor of thinking, well, actually, this might make me have a nervous situation. This might be something that is anxiety inducing. Perhaps we're going to allow more time on this particular day for this event. Or actually, I'm really looking forward to something, and I don't think I've got anything to worry about. I'm just going to have the foods that I know I can eat well, which don't cause issues. Yeah, it's daily management. But like anybody in life, there are things that we can't always predict will happen. But there are also times where if we generally take care of ourselves, then actually we'll have optimal results. But as you say, there's also what are the boundaries, what are the ethics and morality that we as astrologers, to some extent, it's a practitioner of consulting and advice, but it's not necessarily, as you say, you're not a doctor, I'm not a trained counsellor, but at the same token, we can give valuable insight, but people still need to do the work to bring about their best results. But also, we're not going to be in that fatalistic world of, we're not going to tell someone you're going to die, you're not going to have all those kind of things. It's kind of, well, none of us know these for certain anyway, even if we had some intuitive download that something not so great might happen. Transits have a plus or a minus, or at best at not so good, but we're all human and we have divine will and we have our timings and everything.
And, you know, astrology is such a great tool, medical and regular, of assessing patterns and those cycles. We were talking before we got on air about cycles and what happened previously when this was going on, and reflecting. And it just gives you such a great, I use the term blueprint all the time, gives you such a great structure of what's happened, who you are, how you react, what you need to learn about. And it just gives you such beautiful insight. I love it, you know, and I think that's one of the more powerful things about medical astrology. So I'll go on to that positive. I'm really into working on Chiron at the moment medically. And, you know, there's a lot written on Chiron. You've got Melanie Reinhardt over there in England. And there's some great books written on Chiron, much more from a psychological than a physical point of view, medical astrology point. And so I've been really looking, I mean, I've been doing astrology 30 years. So I've been looking at a lot of charts over the years, and Chiron and triggers with Chiron, and what that story, you know, Chiron's whole mythology. You know, I find it interesting. We talk more about the mythology of Chiron than any of the other planets. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. A lot of people who are into astrology know that there's the idea that Chiron's the wounded healer, and we might have wounds and things we need to deal with throughout a lifetime.
No, but it's interesting because we don't talk about that. We don't do a mythology story when we teach every planet. I mean, we do, but not that level. Yeah, one of my favorite first books on astrology was actually the mythology of each of the planets. I loved it. I can't even remember who wrote it. It's like a little gray book. And I think learning, and there are astrologers that are incredible with the mythology, right? I know a lot of them do come to LSA, and they teach via the myth. I do love that, but it's not always part of that original teaching, I guess is what I'm saying. But yeah. People like Jason Hawley and Brian Clark, amazing mythology, telling by the story. But Chiron is one we all tell the story of. That's where I was going with that. And it's interesting medically, and I'm still unfolding it. I would love to probably get a hold of Melanie, and I don't actually know her, but I know Frank does, and talk to her about it. But watching physically, because so often when people have really big traumatic health events, Chiron is involved, you know, because Chiron's mythology, we call him the wounded healer, but if people don't know, he's immortal, but he gets wounded by an arrow that should have killed him, but he's immortal, so he doesn't die. And he's this incredible, he teaches healing. Like he taught Asclepius, who becomes the god of medicine, originally immortal, but anyway, he's this incredible teacher, but he can't fix himself. It's that wound that's unfixable. But in working on that wound, such a gift, right? They talk about there's your greatest gift or your genius, or
Yeah.
but in looking at it in medical, and I'm sure this is written about in regular as well. I've read all the things to do with it, so it's not my invention, anything I'm saying, but the surrender, he eventually surrendered his immortality to get out of pain. He traded with Prometheus so he could get off the rock, and he died. He surrendered his, living. And there's something with health ailments when Chiron is involved around surrendering to this kind of bigger issue that you can't fix. And so in the surrender, there's this self-acceptance or a self-love that has to come about for the superpower to kind of come out with its gift. Is that making any sense? Yeah. Like Chiron in Taurus. Let's go for Taurus because it's the most obvious one. And I've been working with a lot of clients on this. Now, I'm not talking about people with major injuries here, but I'm just thinking in general. Chiron in Taurus is a wounding around how you value your physical body, right? And undervaluing your physical body. And so in looking back, when I work with clients, when you name it, astrology is so great for being able to name something that most of us can't name ourselves. And when I say to clients, this placement where Chiron is in the second or Chiron in Taurus is about undervaluing or not valuing your physical form because it's let them down. It's tricked them. It feels like it's betrayed them. It's caused them a lot of problems, or they're embarrassed about their body. There's almost a hate. Not always. There can be undervalue, but then there's also like a dislike of your own physicality. And when you say it to people, it's amazing to watch. I find Zoom, we do most of our consult by Zoom now. In some ways, I feel like we're hyper focused when like you really can see people processing stuff because you can't kind of hide, right? You're just sitting there. So you're like front and center. And it's amazing when you talk to people about Chiron and Taurus and they're like, they might not have brought it up in the consult, but you're like, this is about valuing your physicality and your body, how beautiful of a machine your body is. And you can see them, it hits, like you can see when things hit hard in astrology, and Chiron hits hard. And it's just been beautiful because sometimes we can't name things in ourselves, but the astrology chart and the astrologer will name it for us. And in just naming something, you bring it to presence, but it also loses power. When you can name something, it loses power over you. If you can't tangibly get to it, it can be more in control. And I love that people are like, oh, wow, part of my journey is about finding love for my physical body. Like, what a great thing to be told. Yeah. But we all probably need to be told that, but does that make sense?
Yeah. Sometimes that's what a lot of astrology is, validating or reassuring what somebody might intuitively have some idea about, or they might be in denial about, and they realize, oh, okay, maybe I do need to do some work in this area.
Yeah. And when we avoid areas, especially Chiron, that's when the pain really gets strong. Whereas when we work on it, and Chiron is that wound that's never going to go away. They say, you can't fix it, but in addressing it and nourishing it, they talk about that's where you learn so much and you have so much to give to others from learning that. Yeah. I was researching for a Chiron lecture that I gave in 2024. And so I reread word for word Melanie's entire book. I'm highlighting a couple other books and, trying to find what people have written about it medically. Because Chiron is often talked about being very prominent in the charts of healers. I also know some amazing healers that don't have a prominent Chiron, but Chiron in the first, Chiron in an angle, Chiron in the 6th or at the 10th, that's a common placement. But I think, yeah. And Chiron was a teacher, right? Like I there's that beauty that he was literally like everybody's mentor, right? And we teach what we've learned. That's where most of us teach from.
Yes.
And so powerful. And I was researching, and this often happens to astrologers that lecture, I find. I wasn't looking at my own transits while I was researching, but I was researching it. So I'm in my 50s. I was through my Chiron return. But I was literally writing a lecture on Chiron while Chiron was on top of my Aries stellium. It was kind of classic. And it took me halfway through giving a lecture on Chiron to even notice. It's so funny how you don't notice it. So I literally had Chiron on Mercury, my Sun, and my Venus as I was doing the lecture. And it was, and as often happens when you teach, you download info from somewhere else that like gives you even more information about it. And it was mind blowing that that's what I was doing. And what I learned randomly, what I was also learning about myself while I wrote the lecture, right? I don't know about other astrology lecturers, but often we put together lectures that we know the material really well. And then I will often volunteer lectures that I want to go do research on. Like I need to dive more into that. So I offer it as a lecture, which forces me timeline wise to do the research. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's been one of my favorite learnings of the last 2 years is really, and I'm still putting info into that Chiron work. It's not, I by no means have my head around it, and it's been amazing to get people to go work on their Chiron. Yeah.
My experience of Chiron in Gemini in my first house, I had that issue of not being able to speak up for myself and having dyspraxia as a child. It was right. I ended up being told a lot by my family, spit it out, Emily. And then that nervousness of was literally causing a slight stutter. So, but now I embrace it and I speak on these lives with lots of beautiful people, and I love it.
I love that. Isn't that beautiful for Chiron and because Chiron and Gemini for everybody is about. I think of Chiron and Gemini as the Cassandra. If you go back into mythology, but I'll get to that. Not being heard or not being listened to, or people not understanding you. There's an issue around how you communicate, be it you can't say what you want to say, or people are misunderstanding what you're saying, or there's actual trouble with speech or hearing or something like that. Yeah. Cassandra in mythology is the daughter of Priam. Is it Priam? The King Priam. The whole mythology around the Trojan War. She's the sister of, she's the sister who's devoted to the god Apollo, and she's a seer, prophetess, and nobody believes her. Nobody believes what Cassandra's saying. She's always speaking the truth, but everybody dismisses her and what she's saying, but everything she says comes true. Yeah. So I really think of that. Yeah. Gemini as Cassandra. No one is hearing what she's saying, or there's trouble with it. And then in the first, that's so interesting that, you were really experiencing that childhood. You experienced it physically. That first house is the physical body. Yeah. So I'm Chiron in Aries, and Chiron in Aries. And then, Chiron in Aries is very much that wounding around your right to kind of exist, to be incarnate in that first sign. Like is there a problem with you, kind of a overall feel, not just your speech or your value, but actually you. And I am I'm telling all kinds of stories about myself. I'm a late diagnosed. If you asked me my whole life, I would told you I was, but I'm a late diagnosed female ADHD. Like I'm very hyper, not just in my mind, but I almost present like a male ADHD. But there's all this new research that it happens, you know, that women are as likely to be ADHD as men. And there's a lot, and I was always told I was too much, or be more quiet, be more patient. I was always told to be more patient. I'm Sun in Aries and Chiron in Aries. And I always felt like there was something wrong with me, like I was broken or I wasn't good enough. There was a whole fear of never being good enough. So you almost overwork to compensate. And that's a real ADHD thing, especially for girls. And it's funny because I got diagnosed while Chiron was crossing my Mercury. And ADHD is literally how your brain's wired, right? So there was this whole dropping in of stuff simultaneously, and a much nicer way to experience a heavy Chiron transit. You know, I didn't have a big physical accident to my body. I literally was enlightened about how my brain and nervous system work, and how the way I am is normal. It's just different to some people. And so there was a huge healing in realizing a bunch of those things. Yeah, it was amazing. Actually, my Chiron transit was amazing. Those transits were phenomenal.
I've heard also that ADHD in women is generally masked more than in men. You get more.
Yes, so it's not always that hyperactivity. There's the hyperactivity is often just in their brain, and they'll mask it, and they're quite the good girl that follows the rules, and they try really hard. They can be very daydreamy. You know, we interrupt people because we're so excited. We don't want to forget. Like there's a thing with it. I mean, that's with all ADHD. And, you know, I was yelled at all the time, and it's rude to interrupt people. I know that, but I get so excited when somebody else is talking about something, and it makes me think of something else. And in ADHD, you're always trying to make connections with the other person. It's not that you're like, it's not that you're not listening to what they're saying. It's triggering off. It's like having a million tabs open on your computer. And when you tell a story, it opens another 3 tabs for me. And I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, but in females, it's very messy. The research at the moment is phenomenal coming out on, because we were never looked at ever. And all these people have grown up, a lot of ADHDers with Chiron and Aries, Taurus, Gemini. I mean, every Chiron can have it, but those 3 especially are the ones getting late diagnosed at the moment. And a lot of those people thought they were broken, thought there was something wrong with them, or they were slightly odd. I mean, we're all odd, but neurodiversity is, it's really interesting that neurodiversity has really hit the forefront of us understanding it and accepting it a lot more, be it autism, you know, ADHD, all different things. With Chiron and Aries, it's been a really big push. It probably started with Chiron and Pisces. I mean, it's been around forever, but in the forefront in medical fields, it is the thing at the moment. And I find it fascinating that it's happened right about the time it went into Aries. We started really talking about it on socials, and people were looking at it. And Aries literally is, I mean, the nervous system is ruled by Mercury and Gemini, but Aries rules everything in the head. And it's so funny that it's speedy and impatient, and it's a good ADHD sign. So I find that fascinating.
Yeah, it would be interesting for someone to do studies on neurodiversity within astrology and stuff.
Some people have. I've seen a couple
they?
lectures by people. I've even read a book recently on ADHD, but it was definitely written before we had the female side to the story, or it was definitely written through the male gaze assessing. And it was looking at this one book I read was looking at an asteroid I had never even heard of. And I liked it. It was good. I can't remember what the book was called, but I just think we know so much more in the last 10 years about autism and neurodiversity. It would be really interesting to look at it now, because we have that whole spectrum of different levels of autism. Because I mean, growing up, the way we thought of, the way I was always taught autism was that quite extreme autistic situation, which is now what we would call a level 3, whereas a very mild, high functioning, doesn't need a lot of assistance. Some of your friends probably are, and you don't even know it. You know, autism is it's very different. So there's this scale of how to look at, I mean, and then ADHD is a different thing in itself to autism, but they're both clumped in the neurodiversity. And yeah, I've been talking to a lot of other astrologers that are diagnosed now, and I was going to sit down with one of them who's also a psychologist or a psychotherapist, and we were going to start looking at our own opinion of, you know, it's definitely, you know, Mercury and probably Mars, and you know, what else is adding into it? What, you know, common placements or aspects or houses are definitely going to add to it. Yeah.
We are kind of coming up to, well, we have gone over an hour or whatever, and it's been a fascinating conversation, and I'm sure there is much more that we could talk about for hours to come, but still, I'm sure that other people wouldn't want to listen to us for too many hours anyway. But at the same token, is there anything else that you'd love to share before we wrap up?
No, I'm just, Emily, thank you so much for having me. It took us a little bit to get organized. I think that was my fault, and time changes, but no, I loved it, because that was great. There was different topics, different questions that I've been asked in a while. And I just think, yeah, what do I want to say? No, medical astrology is so fun if you learn to play with it properly. So go, you know, dive into, download a chart or have a look at your, you know, always learning on your own chart is the most interesting. Everybody loves looking at their own chart. Just have fun with it. Be gentle with it, though.
Yeah. And where can people find you and work with you, or do any of your courses, etc.?
Sure. So my website and Instagram handle are the same, and that is Astrology of Health. So astrologyofhealth.com or at Astrology of Health. And there's a bunch of other YouTube videos you can watch. There's some free downloads, and there is a massive plethora of courses. I just kind of reorganize them into clumps. I do a lot of lecturing online, be it live or then the recordings are available. And yeah, so like last year I ran live 4 levels of medical astrology. So that's now available as recordings, but I actually am in like 1 week, which is random that we're chatting, but in 1 week, I'm starting a 7-week course. I don't know when, this is live. So in 1 week from today, I'm starting a 7-week, it's called Foundations of Medical Astrology. So kind of baby medical, you know, the first 14, 15 hours of what I teach, but I'm teaching it from I'm teaching it, it's not just for health practitioners, but it is taught with them in mind that they don't have a lot of astrology. So it's a really good class to take if you're only a newbie, baby astrologer, not babyish, but if you're a really advanced astrologer, my medical astrology for astrologers is better. But the foundations could also just be really fun, even though it's not going to be super technical medical super technical astrological in those 7 weeks. So that's happening next week. So I'm super excited for that because I love health practitioners getting aware of how to use the energetics in Western healing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Kira. And if people enjoy our content, please do like, subscribe, share with your friends, and check out Kira's website.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right, I'll wrap up here then. Bye, everyone.